Following last week's stunning ruling by the Supreme Court, which struck down President Trump's executive order revoking birthright citizenship, the president vowed to continue the fight on this issue, suggesting he might pursue legislative means next. Here to catch us up on the latest developments in this story, live from the White House, is our chief political correspondent. What's new?
Oh, not much. I went out on a date with Teresa from Research on Friday.
I
thought it went well. I told all my best stories. The time I lost a tennis match in straight sets to Shelley Moore Capito. The time I caught my mom in bed with Lee Atwater. How my dad got out of going to Vietnam by giving a blowjob to Robert McNamara, which was before my time, obviously, but Dad told the story when he gave the toast at my sister's wedding.
When I said what's new...
And Teresa sat there and listened politely to everything, but she hasn't returned any of my calls or texts. So I don't know what to do, really.
What's new with the president?
Should I go to her house?
Absolutely not. I've known Teresa for 10 years. She's like a sister to me. If you even drive past her house, I'll have you murdered in your bed by professionals so skilled that neither they nor I will ever be convicted for the crime, despite the fact that I just announced it on national television. I hope we're clear on that point. Now, what's new with President Trump's attempt to end birthright citizenship?
You could have just asked that to start with. The U.S. Supreme Court has struck down President Trump's executive order revoking birthright citizenship, as our viewers will know, and...
Because I just told them.
Are you good?
I'm great.
In light of that ruling from the High Court, President Trump has decided to continue his fight to end birthright citizenship, which he wants to do because it's insane and no other country has it. Though he previously suggested that he might pursue a legislative remedy, legal experts have noted that no such method seems possible short of a constitutional amendment. That being the case, President Trump has decided to direct his efforts in a new direction altogether. I can now report, based on off-the-record conversations with multiple well-placed sources within the administration, as well as a few key details I overheard while lurking just outside the White House mess and later confirmed by speaking with kitchen staff, that President Trump intends to issue a new executive order establishing his own Supreme Court.
His own Supreme Court?
That's correct.
What will it be called?
Trump Court.
I see.
According to a draft of the Truth Social post the president plans to make in conjunction with the executive order, naming it Trump Court is not President Trump's idea, and he's actually against it, but his entire cabinet outvoted him and are insisting that he name it that, so what else is he going to do?
A good leader listens to his advisors, but how is this going to work?
The president will issue an executive order establishing the creation of Trump Court, and then Trump Court will exist.
And it will replace the current Supreme Court?
The two courts operating alongside one another is the arrangement that I overheard being discussed during the serving of the Continental Breakfast this morning.
So the Trump Court will be a second Supreme Court?
It will be an alternative Supreme Court. Also, it's not the Trump Court, it's just Trump Court. It's cleaner.
Very well. It's just, for the sake of our viewers and their understanding of the situation, I want to clarify how this court is going to function. The justices on Trump Court will review cases that have made their way through the standard appellate process?
Sometimes. Let's say a case has been heard before the U.S. Court of Appeals, and after the ruling, the losing side wants to take it a step further. They could appeal to the traditional U.S. Supreme Court, just like always, or they could choose to appeal instead to Trump Court.
And what would be the advantage of that? Why appeal to Trump Court rather than the U.S. Supreme Court?
Many possible reasons. For one, better odds of actually having your case heard. The U.S. Supreme Court only chooses to review a small number of the cases submitted to it. Justices serving on Trump Court will review a much greater number of cases. And there will be an expedited submission process through which cases can be submitted for a fee to ensure that not only are they reviewed by the court, but that they are reviewed and resolved in a timely manner. I believe the name they're currently considering for that service is the Rocket Docket. They're going to try to get SpaceX to sponsor it. And the more money you pay, the quicker the justices will review your case, so you know everything is being handled fairly.
It's about time money was allowed to influence the judicial system, but let me play devil's advocate for a moment here. The creation of this new court by executive order, the naming of it after President Trump, the inclusion of a paid procedural fast lane, so to speak, all of these things might suggest to some that Trump Court will be a corrupt and illegitimate institution. How does the president intend to answer these concerns?
I'm told that President Trump believes sunlight is the best disinfectant, and to that end, he plans to televise all sessions of Trump Court. He's currently preparing to shop a programming package to the major TV networks, as well as several select cable outlets and streaming platforms, which will include not only live coverage of Trump Court while it is in session, but also a reality show which documents all the juicy behind-the-scenes drama. I'm told the title they're considering for the reality show is Behind the Bench, which sounds pretty hot to me. I definitely watch that.
If anyone knows reality TV, it's the current president of the United States. Have you learned from any of your sources, such as they are, who President Trump intends to appoint to serve on his new court?
The roster of justices of Trump Court is, of course, subject to change, and we won't know for certain until the president makes his official announcement. But I have gathered some names, and rumors though they may be, I think you'll find it a plausible list. The first two names are Justices Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh.
Two of President Trump's appointees to the current Supreme Court.
That is correct.
That raises multiple questions. First, if President Trump is drawing justices for his new court from his previous selections for the current court, why only Gorsuch and Kavanaugh? Why not also his most recent appointee, Justice Amy Coney Barrett?
One might speculate that President Trump holds a grudge against Justice Barrett for joining the majority in the opinion that just struck down his executive order revoking birthright citizenship. However, such pettiness would be unbecoming for a head of state and is certainly not what we've come to expect from a man as dignified and circumspect as President Trump.
Certainly not.
Which is why I believe the exclusion of Justice Barrett from Trump Court is due to the simple fact that President Trump doesn't want any girls on his new court.
It's important for men to have their own spaces. Who else have you heard that President Trump intends to appoint to this new alternative Supreme Court?
There's also Rudy Giuliani, former mayor of New York City, who has represented the president as his attorney and is a fellow former Saturday Night Live host.
How many Supreme Court justices can say that?
Next on the list, President Trump's daughter and former judge on The Apprentice, Ivanka Trump.
But I thought you just said Trump Court would be no girls allowed.
True. However, we must also remember how much President Trump loves Ivanka, a love that drives him to break the rules, even rules he established himself, even rules that are deeply ingrained, seemingly inviolable social taboos where she is concerned.
Truly, love is an unstoppable force.
Indeed it is, including the love I feel growing in my heart for Teresa, which may still compel me to make an unannounced visit to her home.
You'll be dead before your dick hits the dirt. I'm not joking. Who else can the American people expect to see on the bench at Trump Court?
The rest of the list is a veritable who's who of legendary jurists. The Undertaker, a fellow WWE Hall of Famer alongside the president, who was famous for presiding over wrestlers' court to settle disputes in the locker room for many years. Dr. Phil, former trial consultant and psychologist who brought his homespun brand of common sense wisdom into America's homes for decades. Jeanine Pirro, current United States attorney and, more importantly, former host of Judge Jeanine. There's also Judge Joe Brown, although I heard this spot might go to current Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas instead. It's also possible President Trump thinks they're the same person. Because he is the least racist person you've ever met, he doesn't even see color to such an extent that he sometimes struggles to tell black people apart.
A standard of tolerance to which we should all aspire. Is that all?
Two more, the Teddy Roosevelt hologram and President Donald Trump.
The president himself will be a member of the court.
Naturally. He's a very hands-on leader, as we all know, and my sources tell me he's looking to repeat the phenomenal success of other organizations he's placed himself in charge of, like the Board of Peace and the Kennedy Center.
President Trump will be the Chief Justice then, I assume?
I understand the term they'll be using is chairman.
Chairman of the court?
Chairman of the court, President Donald Trump, that's correct.
Wouldn't the sitting president of the United States serving as a justice on the Supreme Court be a flagrant violation of the separation of powers? That's the clear-eyed reporting we come to you for. That's a total of 10 justices.
That's right. The traditional Supreme Court only has 9. Trump Court has 10, so it's better.
Isn't the president concerned about having an even number of justices? What if, while deciding some future case, they end up in a tie?
Oh, I don't think that will be a problem.
A brief recap for the benefit of those of you who may only just be joining us. We've been discussing a forthcoming executive order from President Trump, which will establish a new Supreme Court, Trump Court, separate from and parallel to the current constitutionally established Supreme Court, which will be under President Trump's total control and, if the reporting of our correspondent is accurate,
which it is,
will be presided over by a roster of the president's closest allies as well as the president himself. Turning back to our chief political correspondent, will Trump Court have the power to overturn rulings of the Supreme Court?
Yes, definitely. In fact, one of my sources informed me this morning that Trump Court's first case will be a review of the Supreme Court decision that struck down President Trump's birthright citizenship order.
Did President Trump conceive this new court solely to restore the executive order that the Supreme Court just invalidated?
I would never want to speculate as to the president's motives, but that would seem to be a likely result of the creation of this new court. I'm pretty sure I overheard them say birthright citizenship. They may also have said Bert's white kitchen ship, though that would make slightly less sense in context. I can't be certain because the person speaking had a mouthful of bagel at the time. Blueberry. Toasted with butter.
We could have done without the description of your source's breakfast.
A reporter lives and dies by the details.
One final question. Can he do this?
He's doing it.
Fair enough.
And why shouldn't he? Why shouldn't he do whatever it takes to bring about some happiness and contentment in his life? Doesn't he have that right? Don't I have that right? Aren't I entitled to have one other person in this rotten world to share myself and my truth with? A woman doesn't listen to a man tell the story of his father swallowing the ejaculate of the Secretary of Defense unless she's interested. I deserve to be happy, don't I? Don't I?
Intriguing questions which you'll have plenty of time to ponder when your bleached and scattered bones are ornamenting some neglected pasture if you ignore my repeated admonishments. Stay on this story and we'll check in next hour. Coming up after the break, another clip from my exclusive sit-down interview with television legend and, based on that last story, future Trump Court Justice Kelsey Grammer. I asked him why Stinky Pete has been absent from the last 3 Toy Story films. You won't believe his answer. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.